Welcome to Empowering the Working Mom podcast, the place where working moms find inspiration, support, and practical advice to thrive in their professional and personal lives while aligning it all with God. I'm your host, Latika, a fellow working mom on a mission to empower you to embrace your God-given strength and resilience of balancing work and life while leading you to align it all with God. Twice monthly, we'll delve into topics that matter to you, from time management, advancing your career, mental health, your relationship with God, and so much more. Get ready for insightful interviews with inspiring working moms, experts, and thought leaders who'll share their wisdom, their experiences, their prayers, and their Tabitha moments. Because together, we can break down barriers, defy stereotypes, and rewrite the narrative of being a working mom. So get ready for your empowering moment. Welcome to the Empowering Working Mom podcast. Hey, working mom, welcome to this episode of Empowering the Working Mom podcast. I am your host, Latika Vines, advocate and coach for working moms, empowering them to have faith-centered equity in the workplace, home, and life. This podcast is where we embrace faith-centered equity. And today we're diving into one of the most sacred and soul nourishing parts of that journey, and that is friendship. In this season, we're peeling the onion on how you can have work and life balance as a working mom. And today we're going to dive into one of the most sacred and soul nourishing parts. And to be honest, we are always juggling the meetings, the meal plans, the meltdowns, multiple meltdowns. And in all of that, our friendships, especially those that we hold dear to us, can quietly slip into the background. But I'm going to tell you, we're going to stop that today. And today we're going to be putting that friendship or those friendships back into focus. And I'm so honored to welcome our guest. I am so happy to have her here with us, Kristen Strong, who's an author, who's a speaker, and she's an encourager to women who are navigating life challenges with grace. She's passionate about helping women like you be a good friend to yourself and to others through principles and practices that breathe life into your relationships. And what I love most is that she reminds us that while friendships may fail us, our loving friend, Jesus, never will. But before we introduce her, if this topic resonates with you, share it with the first working mom who comes to your mind. And don't forget to check out the show notes with all the important updates within our community. Kristen, welcome to the show. I am so excited to have you on with us today. Tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Latika. I'm just thrilled to be here. And so, yeah, I am a wife to a retired Air Force officer. He's an Air Force vet, and we live in Colorado Springs, Colorado. That's the Air Force brought us here. We went from we went from the tropical island of Hawaii to the mountain town of Colorado Springs. So, and we just never left. My husband actually retired from the Air Force a while back, and we stayed put because we had friends that had circled back here too. After many seasons of not having friends, it was nice to be somewhere where we didn't feel like we had to start over again. But I'm the mom of three kids. I have twin sons that are 25, and then a daughter that just turned 22. So we're essentially an empty nester, although our daughter is living with us for the summer, which is great because she was in Spain last semester studying abroad. So love having the baby chick back in the nest. but for a short time anyway. But yeah, and so my husband still works. Actually, he works at the Air Force Academy on the civilian side of things, doing some research, some work with telescopes. And I have pretty much, I mean, I've been a writer since I was a kid. I love to write, but as far as really, as a kid, I would write stories and, my diary with a little lock, I had that back in the 80s. But that kind of fell by the wayside probably when I got into college and whatnot. And then actually, when my husband was deployed, I got back into writing. I picked it back up like a friend, and started kind of doing more nonfiction writing. Whereas in my, younger years, I did a lot of fiction writing. And I was on like my school newspaper and stuff like that, or school yearbook committee and whatnot. But anyway, picked writing back up again. And so, yeah, I'm now just released my sixth traditionally published book. So thank you. Those were five all written by me. One, I was the compiler. I wrote a little bit of it. It's called Praying Through Loneliness, a devotional. But a lot of people contributed to that. But then the most recent one, Desperate Woman Seeks Friends, really delves into just I mean, honest to goodness, my struggles with friendship, even just knowing how to make friends and how to keep friends, and when is it okay to let a friend go, and like you mentioned, how to be a good friend to myself by setting myself up for success and not inadvertently sabotaging my friendships, but also how to be a good friend to others, and have principles and practices that give life to those friendships, and so that they have some longevity. Not every friendship lasts forever, certainly. That expression, they're in our lives for a reason, a season, or a lifetime. But you'd like to think that some do stand the test of time. And thankfully, I have some that have lasted for decades, and I'm real grateful for that. But I haven't always been able to say that.
That is amazing. Um, I have a couple that I've known for the last 30 years. And it's such a blessing that I can say these friends I went to middle school with, these friends, I met when I was 11, like it's
Hmm.
it's so amazing that you can say that, like, I've known you for 3 decades,
Hmm.
it's just so amazing. So thank you for being here and for sharing with us today. I'm so excited about our conversation, and I just want us to jump right into it because this is such a important topic to me, and I'm sure to so many others. Um, and friendship, it's not a luxury, it's a lifeline.
Absolutely.
And for the mom who feels like she's too busy or occupied or even too broken,
Mm.
maybe there's some situations that have occurred in her life, constant moves or divorce, or just having multiple children back to back to back to back. It's hard sometimes to build those deep friendships. What would you say to her?
Yeah, I would say I'm so sorry for what you've been through that's kind of led you to be like, you know what? This all sounds great for everybody else, but women are tricky and I'm just done. I have been there before, I got the t-shirt, like it's a very real thing. And I would tell you, you are absolutely not alone in that. It is hard to make friends. It has never been harder to make friends. There is all kinds of factors that play into that today. It's parents today, we spend twice as much time with our children as parents in the past. So that's a large, that's a huge chunk of the pie if you think of your time as a pie. And that's less for friendship, and friendship in a way in which you wisely stated, Latika, we already want to back burner that. And so when there's less legitimate time to do it, then it's real easy easy then, and to just again let that fall off the back burner. Let alone if you've been hurt or rejected or thought, as I have, oh, this friendship is solid. It looks this way, and then seemingly overnight, you find out it looks another way. And I'm just so sorry if that has happened to you. I would say that, it is okay to be sad about that, to mourn that, talk about that with, a therapist, a counselor, your mama, your sister, whomever, you need to process that with. I would just ask you to hold on though, that if that has happened to you, I want you to know it wasn't about you. It was about the other person. It was about her bandwidth, her resources, her own insecurities. It is not about you. And that's just, I've seen that over and over again. I even give some stories in the book where I have that confirmed. So there is that. And also, I would just remember that, you know, God, it is very true that God wants us to have friendships. Jesus walked this earth with friends. And if he walked the earth with friends as a perfect human being, it's probably a good idea for us to as well. And therefore, it's God's will for you to. You are not the exception to that. At the same time, though, when you do face rejection, because we have, I just like to in my own life hold this just this posture that, okay, this terrible thing happened. But as my friend Selena Duffy says, sometimes rejection is God's protection against what's not in our best interest. And if that friend has been removed from your life, either dramatically or gradually, some way, somehow, God, who can see the future, knows that it's just not in your best interest to continue walking with that friend. And, again, it's so difficult when you're going through it, but somehow the pain from what happened through that will long term not be greater than the gain. And the important thing is to just remember, okay, this happened, but I am not going to let it make me retreat further and further from people. I'm going to accept that as it is, but do what I can to still reach out to somebody else or invest in the other friends I already have to a greater degree, to those who appreciate the gifts and the value I bring to their lives.
That's so good. I know so many of us can attest to one day having a solid friendship and then the next day it's like, wait a minute, what happened? Did I say something? Did I do something? Did I look a certain, all the
Right.
things.
Right.
Um, but I love your example of Jesus because Jesus did walk this earth and he did have a lot of friends, right?
Right.
Um, but one thing that I took from Jesus' example is that he had like several buckets of friends. He
Mm,
had, you know, Jesus had a lot of disciples and apostles, a lot.
mhm.
And so he had one bucket with, 70 plus disciples and apostles. Then he had another set of friends with
Right.
just the 12. And these folks, they did life with him, but they really didn't do life with him. They were with him in his ministry and everything. But then he had that solid core, Peter,
Right.
James, and John.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
these walked with him. These saw him cry. They were in that lonely place with Jesus. They may not have physically been there as he was crying to God, but they could see him, you know? And I
Mm.
always look at that. He set the example for us when it comes to our friendships, that we're going to have these buckets of people, and it's okay to have these buckets of people, but to know that you're going to have maybe those two or three that you're going to be really, really close with, you know?
Yes. I love what you're saying there too, because it reminds me, since we were talking about rejection too, in that
Yes.
medium-sized bucket of the 12, he had, Judas, who went down in
Yes.
infamy for the betrayal and rejection, like, I mean, on a massive level. And yet, I mean, it's amazing that Jesus knew all that was happening and loved him anyway. But I love that because when I do have some major or minor friendship hurts, I can go to Jesus with those because he knows absolutely what it feels like to have your friends, just treat you terribly as they shouldn't, And so that I think is such a big comfort too. And then the other thing that you said that resonated with me is, I read a book by Drew Hunter called Made for Friendship. And I talk about this in my book. It's so good. But one thing he talks about in there is how we treat friendship like a cruise ship. We know a little bit about 1,000 people. And we need to treat friendship like a submarine where we just have that core. At least two, three, four people that we are going deep with, and just being vulnerable with, and they're reciprocating that by being vulnerable with you as well, and then a trust is developing over time because that's where you feel like you have friends. If you have two good friends like that, most people say you need three or four, more than one anyway, because you don't want to overwhelm the one. Because, I'm 51. By the time you're in your 50s, you have got a lot of stuff. And so, like, you don't want to overwhelm the one friend. But, you will feel more satisfied when you are sharing with two, three, four people then if you just know that 100 people that you're not really ever sharing anything of consequence with, you might say, oh, I have 100 friends, but if you're not really sharing with them, that's going to feel like less friendship than two, three, or four people that you're going deep with.
That is so good.
I know. I thought that I think of that all the time. I read that 2.5, 3 years ago. I still think of it all the time.
Mm, that is so, so, so good. I love that analogy of the cruise ship and the submarine because
That's what
that's
I read. Yes, I love it too.
yeah,
So
that
good.
that submarine, like, because you going deep into the water in that
Yeah.
submarine, and there's no escaping.
No, no, you are stuck on the sub. God
Right.
bless those that do it, because wow, that's a commit.
Yeah.
That's a job. But
Yes.
figuratively speaking, that is what we do because there's a risk. When you're vulnerable, you can't guarantee how the other person's going to receive it. Now, I can tell you again, at this stage of my life, 99.99% of the time when I share something vulnerably, it is well received.
Right.
That doesn't mean that the person listening can 100% identify with the same thing, but they got something else that's equally, bad or ugly that, they're dealing with as well. So it just may be in a different way. So, in my 20s and maybe even in my 30s, I wasn't so convinced that if I was really vulnerable, it would be received well. But now, I don't, yeah, I've seen that it's just not it's not a thing so much.
I love you so much
Oh,
because
you're
you
so
you
sweet. You're so
you
sweet.
are, I'm sure there's so many of us that can stand and witness to what you are saying because I like even for myself, I realized that there were a lot of people that I was calling friends,
Mm,
right? I put a
mm,
lot of people in one category, and you are my friend. And when I call you friend, I'm gonna drop everything I'm doing. I'm gonna do everything for you. But I realized that that wasn't not everybody was doing that for me.
right,
And I had to realize that I had to put people, in these different buckets to realize that I can't do that with everybody,
right. Oh
you
no.
know?
Yeah. Not if you want to shower, feed your kids, stuff like
Right,
that. Yeah.
right, right. I can't do that with everybody. And I have to be very selective. But I also had to learn, okay, if I am going to be a friend to this person, then I need them to be a friend to me.
Yes.
And then these are some of the things. And, I equate it to a marriage,
Yeah.
like I'm marrying you as a friend. And so these are some of my boundaries. What are your boundaries? And that
Right.
type of, relationship and having that communication. But it's so true. In my 20s and 30s, it was yeah. And now that I'm 40, it's like, huh, well, Okay. you know?
Yes, yes. And listen, and there's an exception to every rule.
Yes.
I can't say that I've never shared something that hasn't been, like received or somebody would judged me for it or just responded like, "Oh, you must like there's a problem here or something." I can't say that's never happened, but it is by far the exception and not the rule. So,
Yes. Oh
yeah.
my goodness. This conversation is so good. We can go on and on and on and on about
No,
this.
I think exactly, exactly. I know.
So, something that I share in my coaching program is that so many of us working moms, we can't pour into others if we're physically, spiritually, and emotionally dehydrated, you know?
Mhm.
And so, with that, do you believe that friendships are part of our spiritual hydration plan?
Oh, that's really good. I hadn't heard it put like that before, but yeah, I believe so. I mean, if God, I mean the Bible. I mean, on what page? It's like page 2 or 3 of the Bible. God says, it is not good for man to be alone. So
Yes.
things are bare. It's like things are barely off the ground, and it's like God is saying, like you need people. And I know some people may hear that and go, well, but you know what? I have my mom, I have my sister, I have my aunt, and I get that. I get like that. You can certainly be friends with your family. I have several, family members that I am very friendly with. But I think, often the thing is that again, like we were talking about before, you can't overwhelm one person. It is good to spread it out. And there's something about friends, whether they are in your same life stage and you or a stage or two ahead of you or behind you, they're with you. That's the thing about friendship. They are in your life because they want to be. There is no duty element. You're not duty bound to it. You're not, connected by blood. Like there's something about that choice in there and choosing to be each other's, ever present help in a time of trouble. I think the last 5 years, our family went through some stuff where, you know, it was like one of those things where like the hits just kept coming, like you figure out one and then another one comes. And I was so tired and deflated. Like my friends, they were like, lifting me on the mat to carrying me to Jesus because I did not have the energy. I mean, it was all I could do to groan out prayers. You know what I'm saying? So like we need our friends because they are just add so much to our lives when life is hard, and they provide another whole dimension to life. And really, just as a Christian woman, when you think of the whole story of Scripture, and God's friendship with us, that is, that is just a facet of our lives we need to have that lived in our own experience. So yeah, I think friendship is really important. And it's one of those things, boy, if you when the fit hits the shan, as it were, and if you don't have those relationships intact, I mean, it is just so much harder to work through. I live out here in the woods in Colorado. And, if I see, an animal traveling on its own, especially like a deer, I know it's not around long. They need several of them because otherwise they just get picked off. And so, by the other critters around. So it's the same with us. We need our group to help keep on keeping on because boy, life can be hard, and we need our friends that divide our sorrows and double our joys, and that's God's plan for all of us. For each of us.
Divide our sorrows and double our joy.
Hmm. Hmm.
Powerful.
Yeah, yeah. And
That
that's
is powerful.
yes. And that's again, I tell the woman who's like, well, they've kind of doubled my sorrows. Thank you very much. Again, I get that. And that is, the loving is a risk, like we cannot guarantee how something is going to turn out. But that is that is, I just implore you to keep trying again for the friends you need, because that is God's will for you, and therefore it's what He wants to partner with you to bring into your life.
That's so good. That is so good. And, I just, again, I love you and I love everything
You're
that
so
you were
sweet,
saying.
Latika. I love you too.
This
You're a
is,
great interviewer. You're great. So,
thank you. This is so powerful because we do, and God created that for us, and I love that you pointed out that God says that man should not be alone.
mhm,
And I believe that's important for us to understand that on top of friendships that we need faith-centered spaces
mhm,
where we can be real. And
mm,
in that realness, we can have that rest. We can
mhm,
have that reset and that reconnect, which is that trust and vulnerability. And that is really the reason behind what I do with visionary initiatives, whether it's a coaching session or our annual breakfast
mm,
or, our rest for productivity workbook and all the things that we do. It's about giving the working moms a tool to live a life that is aligned with God with no guilt. So,
mm.
can you share a simple but powerful practice that helps you and others stay grounded in friendship?
Yes, yes. Yeah, and I know when you're a working mom, it's like, wow, please just give me one more thing I gotta do, you know? Like I got nothing else going on already. And I get that. I would say, I love social media. I love my phone. It helps me connect with my 3 kids that live, hither and yon most of the year. But if we are only getting our connection from social media, it's like eating by breadcrumbs instead of sitting down to a solid meal that is a face-to-face person. And so, that is where I would encourage you sitting down face to face. So you're like, okay, well, how do I do that then with everything else I got going on? The thought I have is sort of, as the expression goes, you kill two birds with one stone. So, and that can show itself in a variety of ways. For example, when I had kids at home and I was working, um, sometimes I would, like, after they went to bed, I'd meet a friend at Target and we would just walk the aisles together. And my husband would stay home with the kids when they were younger, or we would do a walk around the neighborhood together. One friend of mine I could think of in particular, Sherry, we lived not too far from each other. So we'd, go on a walk in the evening, at least in the warmer months. But when it got cold, we'd go to Target. So that's an idea. Also, I think of like ritual. What is something you enjoy that you could do on repeat? Again, when my kids were younger, we would often do Saturday Barnes and Noble story time or a library story time. And then, I would just survey the women and be like, or just, is there one you kind of naturally keep striking up a conversation with? Can you then ask her, hey, would you like to come over for a cup of coffee? Or could we meet somewhere for a cup of coffee? Because kind of taking that friendship away, even if it's in the workplace where you're working, that friendship away from the work environment, if there's a way to get together, um, and to do that in a ritual way. So what I mean is, like, on the third Thursday of the month, can you have your lunch break together? Or can you, go out for dinner together once, if you, 'cause I always worked from home. So once my husband got home, I could then, skedaddle. But but is there a way to work that out? Or a friend of mine now, she and I, we take a regular exercise class together a couple of times a week. So we talk while we're exercising because, listen, I got too big a sweet tooth at 51 to not exercise. I'm not giving up the sweet tooth, so I guess I got to exercise. So anyway, we will meet and talk before and after, that exercise class. So something that's important to you or that you enjoy, sign up for a painting class or, a cooking class. Or if you're a person of faith, certainly, is there somebody at church that you are seeing that you could just go up and ask first. Say, hey, listen, I'd love to get together with you. Nobody is offended by that. Nobody is like, oh my gosh, I can't believe she's like bothering me. No, they're honored that you thought enough of them to ask. Now, and then the thing is because I've had a good friend of mine, for example, a good friend of mine, we actually were neighbors in Albuquerque, and she circled back around to Colorado Springs, moved here this last year. And she was telling me that she asked three different people to get together for a cup of coffee, and they all said no. And that annoys me so much because it's like, okay, maybe you can't this week, but don't, when somebody's brave enough to say that, don't you be saying no. Like, and listen, or be honest, like, oh my gosh, I would love to, but my schedule is nutso for 6 months. Can I get back to you? That's something, I get that. You may not be able to do it like this week or this month, but can you do it 3 months from now? Can you do it 6 months from now? Unless, and again, I get like if you've suffered some tragedy, some big loss, and you're like, listen, it is all I can do to feed my children right now. Like, again, there's exceptions to every rule, but by and large, if somebody asks you for a cup of coffee, and I'm preaching to the choir here because I've now lived in Colorado Springs 15 years. I am not the new girl anymore. I always, well, at least I should say almost always. I may have dropped the ball on this. I can't say absolute, but I will 9.5 times out of 10 say yes, even if I can't do it for 3 months. I put the date on the schedule 3 months from now and try to make it work. So anyway, but overall, I just love the idea of finding something you can do in the cracks of your schedule, like the Target, after the kids go to bed, or a ritual, going on a walk together the second Tuesday of every of the month. I have another friend. We have coffee dates now again, we're both empty nesters, so we have more freedom in our schedule. We have coffee pretty much every Friday together because like we can, and we leave those coffee dates feeling better than we did when we showed up. That's the goal, is you want to have a friendship that gives you such life, you crave the getting together. So, and then just take it from there.
I love those rituals. I love that. I really, really do. It takes intentionality.
It does. And the older you get, the more intentionality it takes, because you're not butting up against folks as, as regularly as you would, like, say, when you were in school or what have you. It's just, we're a little more scattered now. And so it does take intentionality, but that's where the fruit is. You got to kind of sometimes climb a little higher to find it, put in a little bit more work than, you might have had to in the olden days. And that's life. Like if I climb Pikes Peak versus climb the hill that our house is on, the hill that our house is on is quite easy. Pikes Peak, a little bit more effort, but it can be done. You just got to commit to the effort. So,
Amen to that.
yeah.
Definitely amen to that. For the moms that are listening, I just want you to remember that you deserve friendship
Yes.
and friendships that pour back into you, not just for support, but for joy and for laughter, for prayer and for peace.
Mm.
And before we wrap up, I want to ask you, Kristen, what your Tabitha moment is to encourage a mom who may be struggling with balancing friendships amongst everything else that she has in her plate. Now, in Acts, it mentions a story of a young lady, and her name is Tabitha. And she was a servant of her community, providing and doing everything that was needed. But one day she became ill and she died. But because of her good works, the Apostle Peter came once he heard and resurrected her, and she became well. And then she was able to get up and start serving her community again, like nothing ever happened. But like Tabitha, I believe that we as working moms are like her. We work and we serve and we work and we serve until one day we become physically, emotionally, and spiritually sick. Was there ever a time in your life where you became like Tabitha and you needed a resurrection?
Mm. I can think about, yes, when my kids were, it's like they were middle school, early high school, in a million activities, but nobody could drive yet. So my address was the minivan. So, and I was just going and going and going. And I think friendship definitely was on the back burner for me then because it was all like I was working all day and it just felt like I could not handle relationships beyond those in my house. And so I guess what came to mind for me is how the grace and understanding of one friend of mine just stood out to me so much. And I think she reflected Jesus in that so much because she was like, listen, she was also a life stage ahead of me. So she had just kind of gotten out of where I was at that time. And she's like, listen, I know you're busy. Don't worry about it. I'll schedule the stuff. I'll schedule the stuff. I'll just let you know when it is. If you can make it, great. And if you can't, then don't. Now, she could have had a whole different attitude. She could have been mad at me, like, hello, Kristen, why did you drop off the planet? I still deserve something. We all make time for what we want, as the saying goes. She could have reacted that way, but she didn't. She showed grace and understanding for the season I was in. And as you have said, Latika, reciprocal friendships are so important. I cannot do the work of two people in a friendship. You're either in or, generally, like, especially if one is getting off the ground. If I don't sense that you're in it as much as as much as like, that would at least be generally speaking, you're reciprocating. Again, if you're going through a real hard time, friendship's not always 50-50. Sometimes you're giving more, sometimes you're receiving more. But if I'm sensing that you're just not into it, in my younger years, I still would have probably chased you a little bit to try to get it to work out. Now I'm like, okay, I'm pivoting to those that do work out. So, while that is true, that was a season in my life where I just couldn't be the friend I wanted to be. And so the fact that my friend's name is Allie stepped in and just did all the planning, and if I could come, great, and if I couldn't, boy, that just took the pressure off where I felt like, "Oh, okay, like, because she's doing that, this doesn't feel overwhelming. I can get together here and there." And so I felt like, she just really reflected, she was Jesus's hands and feet that just gave me enough breathing room to where I felt like I could resurrect a little better and be a friend that where if I had to do all the planning and organizing, I just could not.
Well, thank God for her.
Yes, yes. So, listen, if you don't have that friend, all you can do control is your own, actions. Is there a friend you can be that way toward, and be the one who's like extending grace. Let me tell you, that is the biggest gift. If you want to give life to your friendships, just give your friends the benefit of the doubt. I'm within reason. Again, there's exceptions to every rule. But the way she did that spoke volumes to how I also wanted to be as a friend. Because in my 20s, I could be rather needy and put demands on friends, put expectations on them, which, just strangles the life out of the friendship. And so having that modeled showed me like, okay, this is what I want to be too. If I'm giving over 50 in this season, 50%, then I can do that. It's not going to kill me. It's fine.
That is so good. So, so good. Oh my goodness. This conversation has reminded me, and I'm sure so many others, that we're made for friendship,
Mm,
not just with each other, but with the one that sticks closer than a brother.
yes.
And if you're a working mom listening today and you're ready to take the next step in aligning your life with a faith filled balance, I invite you to download our free faith centered balance tracker linked in the show notes and check out the coaching program link where it'll help you to discover your identity, your authority, and community. So you'll never have to walk this journey alone. Kristen, thank you again for sharing your wisdom and your heart with us. I am looking forward to staying connected with you. But how can the moms and dads that are listening to us today. Stay connected with you and learn about everything that you have going on, book tours, and everything
Oh,
else.
sure. Well, I have a website. It's just my name, KristenStrong.com, and that's KristenStrong.com. And, I have all the tabs at the top with speaking and then books. And if you tap the books, you'll see Desperate Woman Seeks Friends right at the top, as well as my other books as well. And you can read more about those. Plus, you can find my books wherever books are sold. If you like a lot of independent bookstores have them, Bookshop, Christian book, Barnes and Noble definitely has it. Amazon definitely has it. So yeah. And then I'm on Instagram at Kristen Strong.
Thank you so very much. Please make sure you get that book because it is amazing. Oh my goodness. Yes. This has been so amazing, and I'm so encouraged by this conversation. So thank you so very much for being here with us today. And I want to thank you, working moms, for joining us for this episode. And until next time, I want you to remember this. You are worthy of lasting friendships. You are worthy of love that nourishes. And above all, you are never walking alone. So stay empowered, stay encouraged, and keep thriving in faith, family, and your career. Don't forget to bless another working mom by sharing this episode with her so she can also gain those aha moments and empowerment. Until next time, God bless you. Thank you for joining us on this episode of the Empowering the Working Mom podcast. As you reflect on the empowering moments, remember that you are not alone in this journey. It takes a whole village to be a working mom. Discover how big your village is by joining fellow working moms in our private Empowering Working Mom online community, where we continue this conversation and support each other every step of the way. Until next time, you got this because God has you.